And when you get yourself on that situation, then you know, wow, you're probably onto something. But if no one's going to do it but you, there might be a little fate involved. I don't know. There could be a higher power or something.
I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog. I'm riding a road, y'all.
What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of None of Your Business. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, turn on post notifications, and you can also check out the links to all of my other socials in the description below. We've also gone live on Patreon, which has a bunch of epic bonus content, such as uncut episodes, early access, and something I'm quite excited about, live Q&A sessions. Once a month, you'll be able to tune in at the time of recording, and at the end of the episode, you'll be able to ask the guest any questions you want. But without further ado, let's get into it. Awesome. So Rick, firstly, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate your time. For the listeners who don't know you, could you just introduce yourself and give us a bit of your background?
Sure. My name is Rick DellaRatta. I'm a professional musician. And then, I kind of gravitated towards the world of jazz, even though I played all different styles growing up, studied all styles, felt like I could make my own little drop in the ocean, so to speak, in the land of jazz and improvisation music and challenging music. And so I'm a pianist, vocalist, composer, and eventually to do all three of those things, I was a sideman playing in everybody's band up until a certain point where I realized, I wanted people to be able to, if they wanted to, hear me, in a situation where they would hear me vocally, instrumentally, and compositionally. So I started doing my own records, and I did 7 of those. And then 9/11 came, and I ended up watching those events, and all I had at the end of that day was a poem. But that poem has just had very long legs, probably going to outlive me because, that poem ended up getting recited at a jazz festival for 8,000 people, and then it was put to music, and then it was just one thing after another. An interview came, and a sentence that from the interview was lifted and became a famous quote. So if you type in Rick DellaRatta famous quote, you get this quote that I said. And just one thing led to another, 850 concerts around the world for our world's most outstanding causes. Many of our most outstanding causes are in Africa, as I was telling you. So, I've been there 9 times, most recently to Nigeria. But so on and on we've gone. And here we are today, Calvin.
Okay, that's quite amazing. So literally most of the things were, how can I say, fueled or pushed by the poem that you wrote that just took off.
Yeah, I started to try to live up to the words of the poem. I figured, if I'm not going to walk the walk in life now, when am I ever, And of course, I have always heard the complaints of people who were older. Oh, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. I wish I had. And there I was staring with these words that were from my heart. And I'm like, this is me. This is who I really am. Why don't I give it a try for a couple of days, And here we are 20 years later.
So you obviously have spoken about how your business or your profession is around the realm of music. Do you have a specific company that you've set up? And what is the purpose of the company? If you can just give us some clarity there.
Sure. So the poem was called Jazz for Peace. So hence my foundation, as you can see in back of there. That sign back there is from a concert I did at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. And so has this been something that you've done your whole life, or did you do something before music? Was there something that you were focused on before music, or is it something you've done your entire life?
Well, actually, I was a paper boy at one time. I was 13 years old, and I got a job because, I just, saw that somebody was delivering paper. Like kids my age were running around throwing those papers around. There was a morning paper and an afternoon paper. And I started delivering the paper for the company called the Schenectady Gazette. It was a newspaper company. And I kind of got ambitious with that. I had a morning route, and then the guy next to me on his morning route gave me his route. And then I had this giant morning route. Then I had an afternoon route. But then what happened was music started creeping in. My homeroom teacher wanted me to play in a band with his sons that were going to play in the school dances. And then there was these other people that had a grown-up band, and they were like, look, kid, we need a keyboard player. We'll sneak you in. We'll sneak you out. Just don't tell anybody your age, that kind of stuff. If you have a few drinks, don't worry, we'll give you a ride home. So all that kind of stuff. So that kind of hooked me up with that. And then once my mother dropped the church organist job on me, that was pretty much it for my paper route aspirations.
Okay, so pretty much your whole life though, which is really awesome.
I have. I mean, the clock is still ticking, but I've never. That's the only job I've had so far is paperboy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, you have to start somewhere at least. And so what was in starting any kind of company, usually there's an initial investment that is required. What was the initial investment you needed here to start Jazz for Peace?
Well, a lot of the investment was the journey that led up to Jazz for Peace. So I had a master's degree in music, so God only knows what that takes nowadays. Back then, it was cheaper to do that. I went and then I did get scholarships and things of that nature. When I got my master's degree, I kind of got paid to go to school because there was a kind of a mentor who was a composer who kind of took me under his wing. Running the jazz composition department, said, I'll introduce you to this people. They'll give you that little thing and that little thing. Then my journey in music, traveling all over the world, that's what led me to the realization that you can really solve a lot of our problems with the arts and culture because of the fact that music breaks all barriers that hold us back. I mean, it just breaks through, language and creed and culture and religion. It reaches people in profoundly positive ways. And so my notoriety as a musician helped me when I started Jazz for Peace because one concert that we did that was kind of important was about a year afterwards at the United Nations. And, to get them to look at me, I had to show them that, I wasn't just starting out. Like, this idea didn't just get invented 2 seconds ago. I had a long history of achievements and all that. But yeah, I mean, as far as, what I do, a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of practice, all those kinds of things go into it. And yes, there are investments because there's a lot of catch-22s. Here's where I can tell you like secret stuff that maybe, nobody would know or nobody would say on a podcast. And that is, you have to break through a lot of catch-22s. There's a lot of situations where someone will say, well, we can't hire you because you're not well known enough for us to hire. Well, you can't get well known unless they do hire you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like in the corporate world, it's like, oh, we will hire you if you have 3 years of experience, but you must be fresh out of university. How does that make any sense? So yeah, I get you.
It's all over the place and they do it all the time. And I don't blame any young person for questioning what the heck is going on, because to me, it just seems to me like it's a little bit way for them to kind of rig the game. They can sneak in this person or that person because everyone else is stuck in this gatekeeping catch-22. And, these gatekeepers are all around you and it's disturbing. There's hypocrisy and there's a lot of situations where there's no checks and balances. So there's people being almost blatantly hypocritical, and yet there's no checks and balances. I mean, I know this is a short podcast, but if we had a long time, I could really tell you some disturbing facts, that just really horrific of situations where there's just no checks and balances to stop these people from doing exactly what they're not. They're posing as this, but in reality, they're the opposite. So what you have to do is you do have to break these catch-22s. I did it in a lot of different ways. I mean, there was one way where, actually for the first Jazz for Peace concert, I was, and no one knew it was going to be the first Jazz for Peace concert at that time. But to get that concert, I had been told to call this guy. And when I called him, he said the same thing I just told you. He said, well, you're just not well known enough in the region. But you can't get well known. That's the gig that gets you well known in the region. You see what I mean? So it was a total catch-22. What happened was my manager was upstate near that area, and I was back in my hometown visiting, and I was, have a consultation with the person helping me with management. And on the floor, I happened to see a newsletter that had come. She was overwhelmed with just things that come in the mail, and she probably hadn't even read it. I just saw it on the floor. Something on the floor had my name on it. And I picked it up, and it was the newsletter of a guy who was on the board of that organization that puts on those concerts, okay? That concert series, prestigious concert series. And in his newsletter, he was kind of making fun of a jazz festival that I had put on myself. So this is what will be really helpful to your listeners to know that, see, I had a record out and I had big names on it. So my first record was successful enough to have a second record and get whoever I wanted. My playing was well enough that it was drawing well-known musicians that wanted to play with me if, a label would only go for it. So again, Catch-22 after Catch-22. Now I have a record with these big name musicians playing with me, but to get gigs with it, they need to know that you already played.
Crazy. Yeah, crazy.
And you have to already have done it, It's one of these ruby slippers from the Wicked Witch of the West and East and North and South. So to get over that Catch-22, I put on my own festival. I put the festival on myself and then had these guys play as a headliner so that I could go back down to New York City and say, hey, I got this album and the band's already touring. They're already performing. You know what I mean? It was breaking the Catch-22 because I already knew about the Catch-22 game, So now I'm breaking it. So what I did was that festival had a shirt. We made T-shirts. The headliner band was on the back. So I walked up to a club that had like 1,000 CDs and probably in some office somewhere that weren't even going to be opened, packages that nobody's going to even open. And I waited till the club owner or the person, that you need to talk to kind of came out to smoke a cigarette or whatever he was doing out in front. And I start talking to him, hey, how does somebody get booked in here? And he's like, yeah, you just give us your CD. Oh, so the CD goes in like a room somewhere, and I'm like goofing around with him. I said, this is the band I want. And I turn my back and I show him the back of my shirt with the band headlining at the jazz festival that I put on myself. So now he's in a pickle and he's like, okay, I'll tell you what, give us this. We'll take a look at this. He promised me this is not going to get up and sure enough, he gave me a week at his club. Okay. But anyway, I put on the festival for that. However, now I'm upstate with this other Catch-22 of those people that are like, well, you're not well known enough in the region, so you can't play at a place that's going to make you well known in the region because you're not in the region. So I'm in that Catch-22, and that was their thing. They had come back with that after all this debilitation. I'm just not well known in the region. So now I have this thing I found on the floor. It's a newsletter, and it's a person saying and making fun of my festival now, really, in his newsletter. But nevertheless, he was like, and Rick DellaRatta, blah, 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 with this, blah. And, it was greatly publicized within the region. He said it in his newsletter. So now when this news came back to me that I was almost expecting, with the Catch-22 news, yes, after much blah, 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 we've decided. I said, oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because there's a person on your board who will gladly correct all of you and correct you as well, that I am well known in the region. In fact, I'm going to send over his newsletter to you right now so you can bring it to the board meeting and show him his own words in there. And they had to give me that gig.
Crazy. So you just finessed the system, basically, played it against themselves.
That's right. Because actually, I'm one of the persons who's here to tell you guys it's rigged. Okay? It's freaking rigged. So that's what I did. And they had to eat their words and give me that concert. And the crazy thing is that concert was the second concert I played after the events of 9/11. Of course, when they gave me that concert, no one knew about 9/11. But 9/11 happened in September of 2001, September 11th. And on the September 26th, I read the poem for 8,500 people at a festival that I was a headliner at. And the next concert, I had put the poem to music at that one where I broke the Catch-22. Okay. So now I broke that Catch-22. Because I broke it, I had that concert on my schedule. And that was the press came out with all kinds of advertisements. DellaRatta starts out concert with Jazz for Peace.
Okay, I see. Okay, that's quite interesting. So you had quite a few challenges that you had to overcome there. And obviously it's like you take a few steps forward, you get knocked back a little bit. What would you say, in those moments, you had to obviously have something that kept you going. What would you say motivated you to keep going in those moments?
I would tell people first and foremost, try to choose something that you're passionate about because at the end of the day, let's say they con you out of this or con you out of that or screw you out of this or catch 22 you out of things, right? What do you have to show for it? And I had to often stop and say, this is crazy what I'm going through, but would I have ever wanted to do something else or choose something else, And there's a lot of other things I would want to do, but not that I feel like I was meant to do or I was passionate to do. And often you can find, Calvin, that there's something that you can do that if you don't do it, it might not even get done on this planet. And when you get yourself on that situation, then wow, you're probably onto something. Because I found with myself, if I didn't do what I've done with Jazz Trapeze, there wouldn't be a Jazz Trapeze. And all those accomplishments and all those achievements and all the things we've done, nobody would have done it. Because believe me, I would have gladly passed the buck to someone else if I could get out of it, But if no one's going to do it but you, there might be a little fate involved. I don't know. There could be a higher power or something.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've never thought about it like that. It's like if I don't do it, it might not actually get done. Like I've never thought about it like that. So that's actually a game changer in terms of perspective.
Look for signs. Like if you get a sign, like if you see something that you really want to do in life and then you notice, I hope somebody else has done it because it looks like a lot of work and you just keep hoping, but eventually it's like, when you get the memo that if you don't do it, no one's going to do it, then you've got something to really contemplate.
Yeah, of course. I think it's tough. Sometimes, we also let the challenges overcome us and, it kind of puts a damper on those signs or we overlook the signs because of different challenges. But speaking on challenges, obviously, no matter our background, our race, our culture, our gender, where we grew up, we are going to face difficulties. What would you say is some of the most difficult, or maybe there's one that stands out above the rest, one of the biggest challenges that you faced in your, life? It could be business related purely, which no doubt would have affected your personal life, or it could be personal life, which no doubt would have affected your business.
Well, there are a lot of situations where it almost seems overwhelmed. It just seems like there's too many factors going against you, and there are times when it seems like at the moment, it seems hopeless at the moment, like there's nothing, there's no way out that I can see at this second, And interestingly enough, during a time when I was feeling like that, I happened to come across this little cartoon, and it was actually a Stoic philosophy type of a cartoon. And basically what the cartoon was, it had some, guy hanging from a branch halfway down a hole. At the bottom of the hole is a lion waiting to eat him as soon as he falls. At the top of the hole are some people with a boulder trying to get at him. And then there's a little chipmunk gnawing on the branch that's going to eat through that branch. He's going to fall. So, but there's an apple on the tree of the branch or some kind of a piece of fruit. And it's like, what should you do? Well, the right thing to do is pick that piece of fruit and just start eating it and enjoying it. Because while you're enjoying that, every single little thing is changing. You know what I mean? And then in the cartoon, it happens that, this crazy thing happens and then this happens and that happens and the guy just walks out of it scot-free. So that's one thing to consider. What looks like it is right now, you just play your best game and let all of the moving parts move in the way that they're going to move. Nothing is ever stationary and holding still the same.
On that note of challenges, if you had a time machine, as great as that would be, and you could go back in time, is there anything that you think you would change?
If I could, in a perfect world, it would be nice to learn your lessons faster. I mean, because, you see these people and it's not always me. Sometimes I see other people too. And I'm like, wow, you took you 20 years to learn that lesson. What if you had learned it in 20 days? You know what I mean? So I would have to say the faster you can learn a lesson, the better. You don't want to slip on the same banana peel. And sometimes people do. So if I could, and I'd probably have to go and identify which one, I don't even know off the top of my head, but if I could just learn the lessons faster, I don't know per se if I would want to not make the mistakes, but just learn and recover from them as fast as possible, because you need the mistakes, because the mistakes are what you learn the most from. Everyone thinks, oh, if you're successful, you must be learning so much. Actually, you don't learn much from the success. You learn more from your failures. So you need the failures.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. It's like you'd rather be a better, more grown, more mature person sooner rather than later. So learning from your mistakes sooner makes the most sense. And you've spoken about how I think you said you've done about 850 concerts worldwide. You've had, all of these great acclamations. Have you ever sat back and felt like you've made it? And if not, what would that look like for you?
The strangest thing is there's always been situations where I felt like, wow, if I do this, that means I've made it. Or if I get past this, that means I've made it. And there's probably been hundreds and hundreds of them. And I can probably now tell you that you never really make it per se, because you're only as good as the enthusiasm that you have to play a good game of life each day. You see a lot of people that have all of these things, but they have a health issue that they can't get well from, or so they wish they didn't have. They would trade all those for this. It's hard to do, but you have to wake up every day if you can. And I say just keep trying if it's hard, because I'm still trying. And that is just try to play a good game of life, and you'll be surprised at the opportunity that's in front of you that you didn't even know was in front of you when you woke up. And it's just all of a sudden something you're going through the day and you're like, wow, what a wonderful opportunity this is. I didn't even think this was going to happen to this day.
Yeah, for sure. Again, off the back of, the thoughts of how much you've already achieved so far and how far you've come in your life, would you say you're happy at the moment?
Well, I'd say due to a lot of happiness being based on achievement. So I think, the inner wealth is there. I have, so many letters from people saying that, what Jazz Rapiste did for them really made a difference. I hope someday you'll get to see it happen in Cape Town and get to experience it for yourself. But until then, you can see what, the letters we've gotten from Rwanda and all of these other places, and of course, all around, the world. I still believe that achieving things in life, I wouldn't trade happiness per se for achievement, but I will take whatever happiness that achievement gives me.
Yeah, I got you. And what would you say is one of the worst pieces of advice that you've ever gotten?
Almost every time someone tells me a sentence and the sentence starts with "Why don't you?" It's almost every time it's a bad piece of advice. So if you're involved in something that you're passionate about and you believe in, look for sentences that say "Why don't I?" or "Why don't we?" Because those are people who actually believe in what they're advising you, because they're willing to put their own skin in the game. Like, why don't we do this together? Why don't I check this for you? That's a person who believes in it. Whereas if someone says, why don't you? I would be wary. Like, the percentage of that's bad advice has got to be astronomical, because they're just throwing it at you. They don't care what happens to you. It's like, why don't you swallow this nonsense and trip all over the place and see if I care, almost is like what they're saying, even if they don't know it.
Yeah, it's like dismissive. It's like they want to make it not their problem and it's just your problem.
Yeah, but they want to see if you'll dance to their song. You know what I mean? So in other words, they're happier just to see you do something, even if it's the wrong thing. They still get a little, what do you call it? A little,
like a kick out of it. Yeah.
They get a kick that you did, that they feel significant. That's it, actually. It makes them, so you're doing it just for their own personal significance. There you go. There's some bad advice for you right there. If someone's doing it just so they can feel significant.
Okay, awesome. That was quite unique. I love it. And so lastly, what is one message you would want to give to a young entrepreneur?
I think a great thing for an entrepreneur is to actually get involved with the work of another entrepreneur, if you are able to find that synergy, because then you can see one thing about entrepreneurs, if they're anything like me, they're actually very happy to share the wealth of their knowledge with somebody else, with the hopes that he will go and, help with these world problems, because that's what entrepreneurs do. I mean, a lot of their work is addressing very important problems that we have. So a great thing for an entrepreneur would be, right now, I mean, here you are, we're Jazz for Peace. An entrepreneur could be like, let's say they're in Cape Town, they come across some outstanding cause or whatever. They share something with them. It could be this podcast, and then they say, you know what? I'd like to work with Jazz for Peace to see how they do it hands-on, watch how they do all of it, almost like a mentorship, and just gain all of that mentorship and knowledge so that they have that going forward in every facet of their journey.
Yeah, it's like a super exchange of value between two really skillful, talented parties. And so, okay, cool. So just before we sign off, now's your time to give your business a little bit of a shameless plug. Where can people find you and your business?
You can actually send an email to us at info@jazzforpeace.org with whatever you want based on whatever knowledge of Jazz for Peace that you have already gained from this podcast. And that is actually a seedling of what I've been talking to you about, this empowerment tree. It grows from the seedling of one person's honest comment. Now, there's jazzforpeace.org is our website, and of course, rickdellarata.com, and all of that stuff at YouTube. You can put those stuff into YouTube and Google and get all kinds of other information.
Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Kelvin. Anytime.
I need a bag, bruh. Send it through quickly. I'm making his dog like I'm in a big league.